I never thought that the scent of her new perfume would become the first sign of a catastrophe that would destroy everything I had believed in for 3 decades. That autumn, the leaves in Fontana fell slowly, as if nature was in no hurry to say goodbye to the summer warmth. Emily and I had lived together for 30 years, 30 years that I considered happy. My name was Philip, I was 52, and I worked as a petroleum engineer at one of the fields nearby. Emily was a perfumer, creating unique fragrances for a small but prestigious company. Our children Rose and Matthew were already grown. Rose was finishing college in San Diego and Matthew was working in Los Angeles, but he came home every weekend. Our golden retriever Charlie greeted me at the door every evening when I returned home. But lately, Emily hadn't been coming out to meet me. At first, I attributed it to fatigue. Her work required constant concentration, experiments with essences and oils. But then something strange began. In October, Emily suddenly started refusing our joint Friday evenings at the restaurant, which we hadn't missed in years. "I have a migraine," she would say. Or, "I have an important deadline tomorrow, I need to work." When our friends Caitlin and her husband invited us to a barbecue, Emily found a reason to stay home. When Rose came home for Thanksgiving and suggested we all go to the movies together, Emily said she wasn't feeling well. I tried not to think the worst. Maybe she really was having a difficult period at work. Maybe menopause. Maybe depression. I suggested we go to the doctor together, but she just waved her hand. "Everything's fine, Philip, don't be dramatic." But everything wasn't fine. Emily started traveling on business trips more often. Once every 2 weeks she would drive to Las Vegas, supposedly to suppliers of rare ingredients for perfumes. It made sense. There really were several large companies in Vegas that worked with the cosmetics industry. But something bothered me. She always returned late in the evening, exhausted, and went straight to bed. One day I suggested going with her. "I'll see where you work, maybe we'll walk around the city." Emily froze as if I had suggested something unacceptable. "No, it would be boring for you. I'm in meetings the whole time." The tone of her voice did not allow for objections. That November evening when she once again drove to Vegas, I sat on the porch with Charlie, watching the sunset and couldn't shake the feeling that my life was falling apart, and I didn't even understand why. Matthew drove up later and, seeing my expression, asked, "Dad, is everything okay?" I told him about my suspicions. My son was silent for a long time and then said, "Maybe it really is worth finding out? You understand, it's better to know the truth." The next day I called my old friend David. We had known each other since college and he had always been someone you could trust. I asked him for a favor, to follow Emily during her next trip to Las Vegas. David didn't ask unnecessary questions. "I'll do everything I can, buddy." A week later, Emily was packing for another business trip. I kissed her goodbye, watching as she loaded her suitcase into the car. Charlie whined at my feet as if sensing my anxiety. When Emily disappeared around the corner, I texted David, "She's left." The next hours dragged on unbearably slowly. I tried to work, checked technical documentation for the new field, but couldn't concentrate. The phone remained silent until evening. Finally, at 8 o'clock, David called. "Philip, sit down. The news isn't great." It turned out that Emily had arrived at a hotel in downtown Vegas. But not alone. She was met by a man, looking about 40, neat in a business suit. David took several photos. They went to the restaurant in the hotel and then went up to the room. Together. "Do you want me to stay? See what happens next?" David asked. "No," I replied, feeling something break inside. "Thank you. That's enough." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with Charlie, who rested his head on my lap, as if understanding what had happened. I replayed our history in my head. How we met in university. How I proposed to her on the beach in Santa Monica. How Rose was born and then Matthew. How we built this house. 30 years of life. And it was all a lie? When Emily returned the next evening, I was sitting in a chair in the semi-dark living room. She flinched when she saw me. "Philip? Why aren't you sleeping?" "Who is he?" I asked quietly. She froze. Seconds stretched like hours. Finally, Emily sank onto the couch and I saw her surrender. "His name is Sam," she whispered. "He's a pharmaceutical consultant. We met 6 months ago in a restaurant when I was on a business trip. He came up to my table, we started talking." 6 months, I repeated. For 6 months she had lied to me every day. "Do you love him?" Emily was silent, and then said something that surprised me more than the betrayal itself. "No, I don't love him." It was an escape. From routine. From the feeling that life was passing me by. "From me, you mean?" "No." She started crying. "Philip, I love you. I've always loved you. This was a mistake. A terrible mistake." The next days were hell. I moved into the guest room. Matthew came and talked to his mother for a long time and then to me. Rose called in tears, begging us not to destroy the family. Even Charlie wandered around confused, not understanding why the atmosphere in the house had become so heavy. Emily told me everything. How Sam wrote to her every day. How they met in Vegas every 2 weeks. How she felt guilty but couldn't stop. "He made me feel young again," she said. "But it was an illusion. I understand that now." "Why didn't you stop it earlier?" I asked. "I was afraid. Afraid to lose that feeling. Afraid to return to reality and realize that I'm just an aging woman in the suburbs." I sat in my office at work, looking at drilling rig diagrams and couldn't make a decision. Divorce? Try to forgive? Matthew and Rose begged me to give their mother another chance. "Dad, she made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But she's sorry. She wants to fix everything." The pain I felt wasn't just about the betrayal itself. It was about the systematic deception, the calculated lies, the careful planning of each trip to Vegas. Every time Emily had kissed me goodbye, packed her suitcase, promised to call when she arrived, she had known exactly where she was going and what she was going to do. The premeditation of it all made it so much worse. I started remembering all the little moments I had missed or dismissed. That time 3 months ago when she had gotten a new phone and said her old one was acting up. The way she had started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. How she would smile at her screen sometimes, then quickly lock it when I entered the room. The signs had been there and I had ignored them all. The worst part was thinking about all those Friday nights when she had claimed to have migraines or work deadlines. Those weren't random excuses. She had been deliberately avoiding spending time with me, with our friends, with our family, because she was too consumed by her secret life. Our traditions, our rituals, everything we had built together over 3 decades, she had casually discarded them all for a man she claimed not to even love. I met with a lawyer. We discussed property finances. I had long ago invested part of my savings in bearer bonds, just in case, even before I found out about the betrayal. Now it seemed prophetic. Under California law, as the one who had been cheated on, I could get a larger share of the property. But when the lawyer placed the divorce documents in front of me, I couldn't sign them. Not because I had forgiven. Not because I had forgotten. But because 30 years couldn't just be erased. Because Rose and Matthew didn't deserve a broken family. Because, despite everything, I still remembered the girl I had fallen in love with 3 decades ago. The lawyer looked at me with understanding. "Take your time, Philip," he said. "This is one of the biggest decisions of your life. You don't have to rush it. But I'll tell you this, staying together for the kids when the kids are already adults rarely works out well. You need to think about what you really want, not just what everyone else wants from you." His words haunted me for days. What did I want? I honestly didn't know anymore. Part of me wanted to run as far away from Emily as possible, to never see her face again, to start fresh somewhere new. But another part of me, the part that remembered 30 years of memories, of laughter, of building a life together, couldn't let go. I thought about the early years of our marriage. How we had struggled financially when I was just starting out as an engineer. How Emily would stay up late working on her fragrance experiments in our tiny apartment kitchen, the smells sometimes so strong they would make me nauseous, but I would never complain because I could see the passion in her eyes. How we had saved every penny for years to buy this house in Fontana, how we had painted every room ourselves, planted every tree in the yard. I thought about when Rose was born. How terrified we both were, 2 young parents with no idea what we were doing. How Emily had cried from exhaustion those first few months, and I had walked the floors at 3 in the morning holding our screaming baby, singing off-key lullabies. How we had been a team then, united against the world. And Matthew, our surprise baby, arriving 5 years after Rose when we thought we were done having children. How Emily had laughed when she found out she was pregnant, saying, "Apparently the universe thinks we need more chaos in our lives." How I had held her hand through another labor, another first cry, another beginning. All of those memories were real. They had happened. Emily had been there for all of them, had been my partner, my love, my best friend. How could that same person have done this to us? How could she have thrown it all away? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. Emily broke things off with Sam. She showed me their correspondence, where she had written to him that she would never meet with him again. She started seeing a therapist. She suggested we go to couples therapy. I agreed, not out of great desire but because the kids asked me to. The first therapy session was brutal. Emily cried through most of it, explaining to the therapist how she had felt invisible, how she had felt like she was disappearing into middle age, how she had felt like I saw her as just a wife and mother rather than as a woman. The therapist asked me how that made me feel. Angry, I said. Because if she felt that way she should have told me. We've been married for 30 years. We've weathered every storm together. And instead of coming to me with her feelings, she went to a stranger. She made a choice to betray everything we built, and now she's trying to justify it by saying she felt invisible? That's not a reason. That's an excuse. The therapist nodded slowly. Emily, how do you respond to that? Emily looked at me with red, swollen eyes. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's no justification for what I did. I was selfish and cowardly. I was so afraid of facing my own feelings, my own fears about getting older, that I ran away. And in running away, I destroyed the most important thing in my life. Then why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why did you keep going back? Not once, not twice, but for 6 months? Every 2 weeks like clockwork. If it was just a mistake, why did you keep making it? Emily covered her face with her hands. Because I'm weak. Because every time I decided it would be the last time, Sam would text me something sweet, or I would feel that flutter of excitement, and I would convince myself that just one more time wouldn't hurt. I was addicted to the feeling, Philip. Addicted to feeling desired and young and exciting. And I kept telling myself I would stop, that I would end it, but I never did until you found out. The therapist intervened. Philip, I want you to understand that nothing Emily did was your fault. Infidelity is always a choice made by the person who cheats. However, if you two want to rebuild this marriage, you'll both need to be willing to examine what led to this point. Not to excuse the betrayal, but to understand the relationship dynamics that created vulnerability. Over the following weeks, we continued therapy. Emily answered every question I had, no matter how painful. She told me about every meeting, every lie she had told me, every moment she had almost confessed but hadn't. She showed me all of her communications with Sam, let me read every message, see every photo. The transparency was something, but it didn't heal the wound. If anything, seeing the details made it worse. I learned that Sam had no idea Emily was married. She had told him she was divorced, that her kids were grown and she was starting a new chapter of her life. When Sam found out the truth, when Emily finally called him to end things, he had been furious. He sent her angry messages calling her a liar and a manipulator. In a twisted way that made me feel slightly better. At least the man hadn't been deliberately trying to destroy someone's marriage. But it didn't change what Emily had done. She had created an entire false identity, lived a double life, become someone I didn't recognize. The woman I had married would never have been capable of such systematic deception. Or maybe she always had been and I had just never seen it. Matthew came over for dinner one evening, and we sat on the porch together while Emily was inside. Charlie lay between us, soaking up the attention from both of us. Dad, can I ask you something? Matthew said, scratching Charlie behind the ears. Of course, son. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive her? Really forgive her, I mean. Not just say you do for our sake, but actually feel it in your heart. I stared out at our yard, at the trees Emily and I had planted years ago, now tall and strong. I don't know, Matthew. Right now I can't imagine it. Every time I look at her, I see her getting into her car to drive to Vegas. I see her lying to my face with a smile. I see her choosing him over everything we built together. How do you forgive that? I'm not saying you should, Matthew said quietly. I want you to be happy, Dad. Whether that's with Mom or without her. You deserve to be happy after everything you've done for us, for this family. If staying with her means you'll be miserable for the rest of your life, then don't do it. Rose and I are adults. We'll be okay. But will you? I asked. Really? Matthew was quiet for a moment. It'll be hard. I won't lie about that. Part of me is really angry at Mom for what she did. But part of me understands that people are complicated and they make terrible mistakes sometimes. I just don't want you sacrificing your happiness for us. You've already sacrificed enough. His words meant more to me than he probably realized. Knowing that my son would support whatever decision I made gave me a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in weeks. Rose came home the following weekend. She had a longer conversation with her mother than I had heard since the truth came out. They were in the kitchen for hours and I could hear Rose's voice rising and falling, sometimes angry, sometimes sad, sometimes just exhausted. When Rose finally emerged, her eyes were red from crying. She sat down next to me on the couch and Charlie immediately jumped up to comfort her. Mom told me everything, Rose said. Every detail. I made her. I needed to understand how this could happen. And do you? Understand, I mean? Rose shook her head. Not really. But I think I understand that Mom was going through something, some kind of midlife crisis or whatever, and instead of handling it like a mature adult, she handled it in the worst possible way. And now she has to live with the consequences. Are you angry with her? Furious, Rose admitted. But I'm also sad for her. And I'm sad for you. And I'm sad for all of us because our family will never be the same again, even if you stay together. I know, I said softly. Dad, I want to tell you something and I need you to really hear me, okay? Rose turned to face me, her expression serious. You don't owe us anything. Matthew and I are grown. We have our own lives. If you want to divorce Mom, do it. Don't stay because you think it's what we need. We need you to be authentic and true to yourself. That's what we need. I pulled my daughter into a hug, this beautiful young woman who had somehow grown up without me noticing. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise, she said with a small laugh. You just never noticed because you were too busy being the best dad in the world. Now we live in the same house, but it's no longer the life we had before. I sleep in the guest room. We talk about household matters, about the kids, about Charlie, but between us is a chasm that cannot be bridged with warm words or remorse. Emily cries at night. I hear her through the wall. She tries to win me back, cooks my favorite dishes, leaves notes of apology. But trust doesn't return on request. Either it exists or it doesn't. And we don't have it anymore. The changes in our daily life were subtle but profound. We no longer touched casually in passing, no more hand on the small of the back when moving past each other in the kitchen, no more quick kisses hello or goodbye. We existed in the same space like roommates following a carefully choreographed dance designed to minimize contact. Emily tried, God knows she tried. She would ask about my day at work, really listening when I talked about the challenges with the new oil field development. She would offer to watch my favorite shows with me. She started wearing the perfume she knew I had always loved, the one she had created years ago when we were happy. But it all felt performative, desperate, like she was trying to turn back time through sheer force of will. I found myself doing small, petty things that I wasn't proud of. I would accept her offers to cook dinner, then eat quickly and retreat to the guest room. When she asked if I wanted to take Charlie for a walk together, I would say I had already walked him. I was punishing her and I knew it, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. The worst moments were when our friends would visit. Caitlin had called several times, sensing something was wrong, but I had put her off with vague excuses. I knew eventually people would notice, would ask questions, and I dreaded having to explain. Our social life had effectively frozen in place. One evening, about 2 months after the truth came out, Emily knocked on the guest room door. I was lying in bed reading and Charlie was curled up at my feet. Can I come in? She asked through the door. It's your house too, I said, not quite an invitation but not a refusal either. She opened the door and stood in the doorway, not entering. She looked older somehow, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her differently now. I've been thinking, she said, about what you said in therapy. About how I should have come to you with my feelings instead of going to Sam. And you're right. I should have. But Philip, I tried. Maybe not hard enough, maybe not clearly enough, but I tried. I set my book down. What are you talking about? 2 years ago, I suggested we take a trip together, just the two of us. Do you remember? I said we should go to Paris, walk along the Seine, visit the perfumeries. You said we couldn't afford it right now, that we needed to save for Rose's college expenses. I did remember that conversation vaguely. What's your point? A year ago, I asked if you would come with me to that conference in San Francisco. I specifically said I wanted you there, that it would be fun to explore the city together. You said you had too much work. Emily, those are just. I asked you if we could see a marriage counselor 6 months before I met Sam, she interrupted. I told you I felt like we were drifting apart, that we needed help reconnecting. You said we were fine, that every long marriage goes through phases, that we just needed to be patient. I fell silent. I did remember that conversation too. I had dismissed her concerns, certain that she was just being dramatic. I'm not saying this to excuse what I did, Emily continued, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. Nothing excuses what I did. But you asked me why I didn't come to you, and the truth is, I did try. And you didn't hear me. Or you heard me but you didn't think it was serious enough to act on. And eventually I stopped trying. She left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind her. Charlie whined and looked at me as if asking what I was going to do about this. Her words haunted me. Had I really been so blind? So dismissive of her attempts to fix things? I racked my brain trying to remember those conversations more clearly. Had there been others I had forgotten about? Other moments when Emily had reached out and I had failed to grasp her hand? I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying our marriage in my mind, but this time looking for the cracks I had missed. The times Emily had seemed sad and I had assumed she was just tired. The times she had tried to talk about us and I had changed the subject. The times she had dressed up for dinner and I had barely noticed because I was thinking about work. The realization was uncomfortable and unwelcome. I hadn't been a perfect husband. I had taken her for granted, assumed our marriage was solid enough that it didn't need maintenance, believed that 30 years together meant we were immune to the problems other couples faced. But did that excuse what she did? No. 1,000 times no. If our marriage was struggling, there were 1,000 other choices she could have made before betrayal. She could have insisted on counseling. She could have told me she was seriously unhappy. She could have even said she wanted a separation to figure things out. Any of those would have been painful but honest. Instead, she had chosen deception. She had chosen to create a secret life rather than fight for our real one. And that choice, that fundamental act of betrayal, couldn't be undone by pointing out my failures as a husband. Last week at dinner, Rose asked, "Dad, Mom, will you ever be together again?" Really together? I looked at Emily. She looked at me with hope and despair simultaneously. "I don't know, sweetheart," I answered honestly. "I really don't know. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive. Maybe someday this pain will dull enough that I'll be able to sleep in our shared bedroom again. Maybe we'll learn to be a married couple again. Or maybe not. For now, we live in the same house for the sake of the children, for the sake of 30 years of shared life, for the sake of memories of who we once were. But that Philip and that Emily who laughed, dreamed, and built a future together, died that night when I learned the truth. Now we're just two strangers playing at happy families for appearances, waiting until the children have fully grown and no longer need the illusion of wholeness. Charlie is the only one who doesn't notice the difference. He still rejoices when we're both home, hoping that someday everything will be like it was before. But I know, nothing will ever be like it was before. Never. The final realization came to me on a cold December evening. I was sitting in my office at the house, reviewing some work documents, when I heard Emily's voice from the living room. She was on the phone with someone, probably one of her colleagues from work. She was laughing, genuinely laughing, in a way I hadn't heard in months. I walked to the doorway and watched her. For just a moment she looked like the Emily I had married, vibrant, alive, happy. And then she saw me watching and the laughter died on her lips. Her expression shifted to something guarded, careful, sad. She quickly ended her phone call. "Sorry," she said. "Was I being too loud?" "No," I replied. And then, because I was tired of pretending, I added, "You sounded happy. It's good to hear you happy." She studied my face, trying to determine if I was being sincere or sarcastic. "I was talking to my friend Janet about a new fragrance line we're developing. It's exciting work." "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. Whatever else had happened between us, I didn't want Emily to be miserable. I just didn't know if I could be the one to make her happy anymore. "Philip," she said softly, "can we talk? Really talk?" I nodded and sat down on the couch. Charlie immediately jumped up between us, providing a physical barrier that seemed somehow appropriate. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Emily began. "For us. For our marriage. And I realize that I've been focused on what I want. I want you to forgive me, I want us to go back to how things were, I want our family to be whole again. But I've never asked you what you want." "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "That's the problem. Some days I think I want a divorce, want to start fresh, want to find someone who won't lie to me for 6 months straight. Other days I think about 30 years of memories and I can't imagine throwing that all away. And some days I just feel numb, like I can't feel anything at all." "That's fair," Emily said quietly. "More than fair. Philip, I need to say something and I need you to really hear it. If you want a divorce, I'll give you one. I won't fight it. I'll sign whatever papers need to be signed, agree to whatever terms you want. You can have the house, the savings, everything. I don't say that because I don't love you or don't want to stay married. I say it because I love you enough to want you to be happy, even if that means being happy without me." It was perhaps the most selfless thing she had said since the affair came to light. And it made me realize something important. Emily did love me. She had loved me even while she was betraying me, which seemed impossible but was apparently true. People were complicated, capable of holding contradictory feelings, of doing terrible things even while knowing they were terrible. "I don't want your money or the house," I said. "I never cared about that. I care about trust. I care about honesty. I care about being able to look at my wife and not wonder if she's lying to me. I know, Emily whispered. And I don't know if I can ever give that back to you. Not because I plan to lie again, I swear I don't, but because trust, once broken, is so hard to rebuild. Maybe impossible. We sat in silence for a long time, Charlie snoring softly between us. Outside, the December wind rattled the windows, the first real cold snap of winter settling over Fontana. I'm not ready to make any decisions yet, I finally said. About divorce, about the future, about any of it. I need more time. Take all the time you need, Emily said. I'll be here. Waiting. Hoping. But I'll understand if the answer is eventually no. As I write this, it's been 3 months since I discovered Emily's affair. We're still living in the same house, still sleeping in separate rooms, still navigating this strange limbo between marriage and divorce. The kids came home for Christmas, and we all pretended to be a normal family, opening presents and watching movies and eating too much food. But everyone could feel the tension underneath. Rose pulled me aside on Christmas night and asked if I was okay. I told her the truth, I didn't know. She hugged me and said, "Dad, whatever you decide, we love you. And we'll support you. Even if that means spending future holidays in 2 different houses." I appreciated her words more than she could know. But the decision still weighed on me, heavy as stone. 30 years of marriage. 2 wonderful children. A life we built together brick by brick. Could I really walk away from all of that? But could I really stay living with someone I no longer trusted, sleeping in separate rooms, going through the motions of marriage without the substance? The answer, I'm realizing, isn't black and white. It's not about forgiving or not forgiving, staying or leaving. It's about figuring out if there's a third option, something between those extremes. Can we rebuild something new from the ashes of what we had? It won't be the same marriage, that's gone forever. But could it be a different kind of marriage, one built on painful honesty instead of comfortable assumptions? I don't have those answers yet. Maybe I never will. All I know is that every day I wake up and I have to choose, do I want to try today or do I want to give up? So far I keep choosing to try. Not because I've forgiven Emily, but because 30 years of love, even if tainted by 6 months of lies, still means something. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's not. Time will tell. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.